Are you afraid you missed an episode of Life Part 2? Or maybe you're afraid you saw a show and have already forgotten it. Well, we've got you covered, because we've gathered together some of the most heated, heartfelt, and outrageous moments from our first season. We've got Dick Cavett on turning 70, Robert Klein on age and vanity, all that plus Carl Reiner, Larry Gelbar, and the truth about nostalgia, aging parents, your aches and pains, and your aging brain. Coming up next on Life Part 2.
Major funding for Life Part 2 was provided by the Atlantic Philanthropies, supporting older adults in living lives of purpose. And by MetLife Foundation, celebrating the wisdom, talent, and experience of older adults. MetLife Foundation proudly supports Life Part 2.
Welcome to Life Part 2. I'm Alan Rosenberg. Rodney Rothman is a former writer for the David Letterman Show who, at the tender age of 28, decided to get a sneak preview of what retirement is like by moving to a senior citizens community in Boca Raton, Florida. He wrote a book about it called Early Bird. And we decided to send Rodney back to Boca to check in with his old friends.
I'm Rodney Rothman. I'm a writer. When I was 28 years old, I decided to retire early in Century Village, Florida. And I was just curious what retirement in America was like. Century Village is an enormous retirement community. It's spread out over thousands of acres. It's not a nursing home. It's the opposite. It's a summer camp, basically.
This is the place to be if you're retired.
I love retirement, but more so, I love living here.
People have this misconception, really, that when you retire, you kind of just sit in a chair and watch other people walk by, and, it's very sedentary. I actually found it to be exhausting. I would usually try to meet up with the shuffleboard club at around 7:30 or 8. I would play shuffleboard every day, sometimes against my will.
You're a loser.
It was almost like they wanted to fill me with, shuffleboard knowledge. Sometimes I'd play tennis. People here play tennis early in the morning before it gets too hot. In the afternoons, it becomes kind of social time. You just gossip and talk kind of like garbage with people.
Are you single?
And there's a lot of cliques. People sit in these groups, and it's hard to break into the groups.
Of course it has to be cliquey. You pick your own friends.
It's the people that play cards that are more or less cliquey.
It reminded me of high school, except that it seems like this place lasts 20 years instead of 4.
Go to the pool. You'll find out who's sleeping with who and who's making out with who.
A lot of single people here. There's a lot of dating. Half of the women in a community like this are widows.
2 widows or 3 widows to a man. I got it made in the shade.
If you can operate an automobile, you just can date all the time. You can have 5 girlfriends at once.
Most women here are looking for a man that drives at night.
I don't drive anymore.
I don't need a man. I drive at night.
They have a wonderful bus system.
It was just really fun here. It was really social. I would walk out of the building and I would see, 50 people that I knew. I had time to actually have conversations with people. You never have time to do that in your real life.
I like that beard. It's a beauty.
Thank you very much.
How do you trim it?
I actually find myself missing just how social it is here and hoping, that when I retire that I'll be able to rebuild some version of this. I definitely encountered wisdom,
Rodney.
but I also encountered a lot of people who were still figuring stuff out for themselves. I remember this guy who was in his 70s. We used to hang out and play golf, and I remember once we were sitting there and he just said to me I haven't quite figured out my thing in life yet. That was sort of a relief, to know that you don't have to have everything figured out.
We did it.
Nicely done. I actually think that the generation that's here now got things right.
You could be my partner anytime.
Really?
Even in a tournament.
On Life Part 2, we've tried to keep our sense of humor about aging, while still addressing deeply serious issues. Take the sandwich generation. Men and women who are simultaneously taking care of their young children while also caring for their own elderly parents. During our panel on this topic, Dr. Robert Kane, one of America's leading gerontologists, got into a rather inspired exchange with journalist Robert Lipsyte about why the elderly, and all of us really, need to stand up for our right to grow old with dignity and respect.
I think that we need to create a situation of what I would call creative indignation. I mean, people like
we
us...
have to have a civil rights movement for old people.
What is a civil rights movement?
And it's really a civil rights movement for us. Because not only are some of us going to get old, not you guys, but we're going to taking care of older people.
If we're looking for recommendations, it seems to me that there are a couple. Number one, I think you're absolutely right about the civil rights issue. If you contrast how we handle disability with younger people with disability compared to how we handle with older disability, this is an ageist society.
Yes.
I mean, basically, the younger persons with disability would argue that the entitlements that they're demanding are civil rights entitlements.
Correct.
That they are
Let's start it right now. We'll have a walker to Washington.
They are denied access to fundamental parts of everyday life. With older people, we consider ourselves enlightened if we let them stay at home. If we could use this show to basically launch a campaign of what I would call creative intolerance.
Yes.
I think that my hero is that newscaster on that movie Network.
Oh, yeah.
Who got people to sort of go to their windows.
I'm not going to take it any longer.
Exactly. We need to just basically talk about...
Well, then you're going to have to change the emotional and psychological wiring of the average American.
But it's also a little tougher talking before to build a movement where the chief beneficiaries of that movement are ageist themselves.
Right.
Some of the worst...
That's right. We internalize those messages. We think, oh, we're old, we're not so valuable, maybe we don't deserve very much, and so you just trickle down.
Or we never consider ourselves old.
That's right. We're talking about them. We're talking about them. They're our parents. As long as we've got parents, we're not old. And, we've got to say, hey, we're old, this is us, and we're not taking it anymore.
I do believe, when people talk about the baby boomers and that when they get old, they're going to really be different. My sense is that a demented baby boomer won't be any different from the current people with dementia. And that if the baby boomer...
To be stoned and have dementia at the same time. Wow, what a future.
But
maybe you won't mind. Right.
You won't know.
No, but the baby boomers are going to have their greatest impact now as they begin to negotiate and demand care for their parents.
It is a civil rights issue. And we always give lip service to the fact that what helps everybody helps ourselves. But like you said before, Bob, this really is about us.
We'll follow you.
Well, thanks a lot. Well, I don't know if I'm qualified to lead a new civil rights movement like Bob Lipsyte suggested, but I'm certainly ready to march. Or limp, as it turns out. Because as our next piece shows, baby boomers are slowly falling apart, aching limb by aching limb. While more of us are overweight than ever, there is also a group of baby boomers who have reached a point of diminishing returns. They can't stop exercising, even if they're injured, and even if their aging bodies are asking them to slow down. There's a name for this phenomenon. It's called boomeritis. Here's our report.
My name is John Hobby. I'm an attorney in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm 50 years old.
How does that make you feel?
Growing up, I played lots of different sports. I played a lot of basketball, I played baseball and football. For the most part now, I run long distances, usually 2 or 3 times a week. I do some weight training 3 or 4 times a week, and whenever I can, I get out on my bicycle. When I can't get to working out, whether it be weight training, running, I feel bloated, I feel grumpy, and I feel like I'm missing something.
There's a sort of broad cultural trend to feeling that you shouldn't be held back by limits. And this can lead to a number of problems, one of which is a hard time accepting the reality of aging.
We sometimes have a catch-22. How much is too much? We have a problem with our body breaking down and trying to keep our body going forward. Well, the boomer population is at a shortfall because they don't recover as quickly as a younger person. Their muscles aren't as strong as they used to be. They're not as flexible as they were, and their bones and ligaments don't hold them up as they used to. They don't see that.
I've had numerous injuries, but I've had a lot of injuries from probably getting older and overdoing it. I had some knee problems. I thought I might need surgery at one point, but luckily I didn't have to do that. I've had a foot problem that kept me off running for about 6 months, and that was very rough. there's something that keeps you coming back to running, because it's not gleeful. It's not something you do and you know, joyful while you're doing it. But at the end of a run, particularly a long run, you feel a sense of euphoria. You know, everything is cool. Whatever that problem was you had when you started running, it's going to work out. It's a really good feeling, and the fact that you get it naturally makes it all the better.
There are some of those who just come in and say, fix it. I want to do this next week, fix it. I've had patients 3 times a day that just tell me, if there's a broken piece, take it out and give me a new one.
So you can ask whether baby boomers are kind of in denial about the long-term consequences of the choices they make now, about not recognizing the implications of their actions for their bodies over time, for their health over time. And denial's a bit of a tricky word, because on one hand, to say I'm not going to be limited, it does open up opportunities. But the downside is it can be flat-out denial to say that there aren't consequences, and my kind of refusing to be frustrated in the short term isn't going to hurt me in the long term.
I don't want anybody to think that we're saying you should not be a boomer and be motivated and dedicated to work out and to go to the next level. We want you to, but use common sense. If something hurts for more than a few days, it's probably injured, not sore. If you can't walk for a week or two, there's an injury. It's not just a limp. If your back hurts and you have leg pain, it's not just a pull, it could be a nerve problem. Just use common sense and be smart. And then go see a physician, a clinician, a trainer, a therapist, somebody to help you work this out and keep you going. Because if not, you will get injured and will suffer.
That's the thing, it just doesn't make any sense to me. For some reason, and I don't know if I'm alone in this generation, but being 50 is not something that happens to people like me.
When I was growing up, there were 2 or 3 comedians who seemed like the hippest, funniest, and most outrageous guys around. And one of that select group was Robert Klein. Robert is now 65 years old, which to him is just more grist for the comedy mill.
I don't know. I'm more cautious about physical things. Bending down for a paper clip, I make an appointment. Then I make the preliminary move. I survey whether I can bend at all. Then I bend down, get the paper clip. But I make certain accommodations to my own feelings about it. Like I refuse to push hair around anymore. I'm proud that the older I get, the more I look like Benjamin Franklin. I mean, the guy was cool as can be, a great man. I get my own haircuts. I say, leave a lot on the sides, please. I want you to shave it real close all the way up here. Leave a little hair here, shave it here. And the back, cut a round circle here, because there may be an opening in a monastery in Belgium. I'm at an age where people retire, and they're at the end of their... My father disliked his work intensely. He was a piece goods salesman in the garment center, selling cotton goods. He couldn't wait to retire. And he and my mother went to South Florida, with which I have a beef. I sent 2 healthy, vibrant, 65-year-old parents to South Florida. 30 years later, they were dead. I mean, what the hell is it down there? The air? Is there chemicals under the ping pong table?
When we weren't laughing about getting old on Life Part 2, we were getting the best information on how to stave off the perils that await us all. Our old friend, journalist Robert Lipsyte, was lucky enough to get some personal advice from one of the leading Alzheimer's researchers in the world, Rudy Tanzi of Harvard.
I'm going to ask for a private consultation right now. About 1.5 years ago, I went to hearing aids after chemo, and I thought, now I'll hear everything. And I do hear everything, but I think that it's somehow as if I'm on satellite phone to Baghdad. Things are a little slower to process. And the audiologist says, well, that's one of the aging processes, is that things are coming back to you a little slow. It's a beat. Is that normal, doctor?
That's actually what aging is about. I mean, there are 2 common misperceptions about aging and memory. It's not that we can't recall or remember. In fact, an elderly person can remember what's already been stored in the brain as well as a young person. What happens with aging is we don't learn as well. We're not inspired to learn as well. The emotion associated with learning that reinforces memory starts to disappear. But that, you hit it really right on the head, is that, you know, the nerve cells are there, the brain cells are there. We don't necessarily lose these brain cells. It's the wires, you know, the dendrites, as they're called, that connect the nerve cells, the connections and synapses that go downhill. So it's tougher to learn as we get older. So you have to force yourself to be better at learning. Then you can store those memories and recall them.
Well, I mean, is there something I can do to speed up that transmission?
Well, what you can do is force yourself to learn new things. The key word is new things. So whatever you do, do it in a new way. For example, if you have the time and you commute on the same route every day, take a new route commuting. If you cook something new. I mean, another thing you can do is use the wrong hand, even brushing your teeth. That will force left brain, right brain interaction. And research has shown through imaging studies that elderly who use both sides of the brain, where you see activity on left and right, actually learn a lot better than those that focus on one side of the brain. So try to use the other side of your brain.
Do you sometimes find yourself longing for the good old days? Do you sometimes think that everything from movies and TV to politics and music used to be better when you were young? Well, all of these issues came up during our panel on adapting to change, which focused on the way we think and feel about popular music. The very passionate players were Gerald Torres, a music-loving law professor, Michael Smyers, a New Orleans-born psychologist and part-time musician, the writer Jesse Kornbluth of HeadButler.com, and Ronnie Bennett, a former TV producer who now blogs about aging on her website, Time Goes By.
I think people who don't love music on some level are on thin rations.
Well, I agree with you, but nostalgia really doesn't feed me. Nostalgia is good for the moment.
Nostalgia is corrosive, and you need to banish nostalgia, in my view.
Is nostalgia unwholesome?
Well,
Do you agree with
I
Gerald?
want to go back to this thin rations part of nostalgia, because I think some nostalgia is not necessarily bad, right?
We disagree. I think nostalgia is corrosive as a category.
As a category?
As a category.
What do you mean by nostalgia then?
But, yeah.
When you say nostalgia is corrosive, what do you mean?
When I say nostalgia, I think of it as remembering something in a way that was better than it really was, right? And so everything that you're living now is somehow deficient in comparison to that memory. Like the best time to be alive is now, because, you know, I may have been alive 40 years ago, right? But I'm a different person than I was 40 years ago. And this is what I have now, and this is what I want, right? And so I have fond memories, right? But, you know, I have fond memories of growing up.
So you're not saying memory is...
memory is vital.
Right.
Memory is vital. I said...
Do you define nostalgia differently than that?
Well, I guess I wouldn't define it as corrosive in the way that you have, Gerald, although your definition obviously sets that up, so I can tell you teach law. But, you know, I think revisiting your memories...
Absolutely. You should
positive and negative.
Absolutely.
Is an important part of growing old.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
One of the great things for me about doing Life Part 2 is that I got to sit down and talk with people I've admired all my life, including the great Carl Reiner. Carl, of course, was a creator of The Dick Van Dyke Show, and he went on to direct George Burns in Oh God, and Steve Martin in a bunch of very funny films. Along with Mel Brooks, Carl also created the classic 2,000-Year-Old Man albums, which I simply love. And I must say that my conversation with Carl Reiner lived up to all of my expectations.
One of the sad things about aging, really is sad, losing friends, losing people. We talked about Mel Brooks, and we see him a lot, and he lost Anne Bancroft a year and a half ago, and it's terrible. You're used to going out with friends and even sitting in places where she used to sit in this chair and he would sit. I mean, that becomes very important. And when you see the obits every day and it's somebody you knew, then it really does. Even though you don't see them all the time, you want to know that they're there, you know. Sure. But when your friends go, and that's that's why nobody really wants to live past their era. Because think about it, you know, this whole thing about longevity and we're going to go on forever. Think about being 112 years old and you got no friends, nobody wants, where am I going to go to sit? You sit someplace and then people, you don't know the people, they don't know you, you know. I think that's probably nature does that and says, okay, you got no more friends, go lie down now.
I I find myself, the first thing I do in the morning is read the obituaries.
I read the bits to see if I should continue my day. I'm not in there. I'll keep going.
Each episode of Life Part 2 ends with what we think of as our closing essay. Comments on aging from some of the sharpest people we know. Here are two of our favorites. The first is from the legendary comedy writer Larry Gelbart, who wrote for Sid Caesar in the early days of TV, triumphed on Broadway with A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and was one of the creators of the TV series MASH. And after Larry comes Dick Cavett, whose talk shows on ABC, PBS, and elsewhere set the standard for civilized, witty talk on TV.
There was a time in my life when I thought of a few months or a few weeks as just so much petty cash. Now, as I find myself looking through what I recognize as the long end of the telescope, I become a miser of minutes. I hoard them, I guard them as though each were going to pay me some kind of interest. And in fact, that's what they sometimes do. While time takes away your peers, it does give you some playmates. Grandchildren, like most of the good things in life, are saved for the end. When you look at the world through their fresh, unclouded eyes, it's as though you're seeing it for the first time. Their relentless, sometimes maddening curiosity does a whole lot to jumpstart your own, probably worn-out one. Aging can be a whole lot more than just tiptoeing through the minefield. I apologize for ending on such a morbid note. I'm not really here to rain on your parade, although with incontinence, who knows? Thank you.
As time goes by, I realize that my sense of time has always been askew. When you're a kid, time drags like hell. I remember got sick once and had to miss the circus. And some well-meaning relative said, well, it'll be here next year. And you think, next year? A year takes an eon to pass. But now, they seem to go by every 3 months at best. Well, I don't feel old. It's like I'm not getting my money's worth out of being 70. I don't feel like an old man. I feel like a young man who has something wrong with him. So, how would I summarize? I guess it would be this. Don't worry about aging. It's not going to go on forever.
Our first season of Life Part 2 featured many inspiring and poignant moments. One that stands out in my mind is our conversation via satellite from Toronto with the internationally famous Jungian analyst Marion Woodman. Marion's many books have sold over 1 million copies worldwide. Her latest book, The Crown of Age, explains that a rich and satisfying old age can be the crowning achievement of life. Marion ended our conversation with a very moving account of how, at the age of 78, she's come to appreciate every moment of her life.
When I was graduating from university, I made up my mind that day that I was going to live my life my way. And I was not going to live it pleasing other people, trying to be what other people wanted me to be. I wasn't going to scrunch myself into anybody else's idea. And I've lived that so that I honestly feel at 78 that I have lived my life. And I can't tell you what that means to me. I did the very best I could, and I'm still doing the best, and I'm having a fabulous time doing it. I realize time is short, and that makes me go to the old people's home and take my friends out to the park. We go and look at the roses, we smell the roses, and you think, you know, life is magnificent. It's the now that matters, not the past, not the future. Right now, that rose is worth smelling, and that child's smile is worth seeing. And that blue jay call or that oriole is a miracle up in that tree. And life is so magnificent. how could one clutter it all up with chatter when the now can be lived with such excitement, especially when it's not going to be very long?
Well, that's it for Life Part 2 for now. I'm Alan Rosenberg. See you next time on the only show on TV whose idea of a good time is talking about getting old. Thanks for watching.
Life Part 2 continues on PBS.org. For more about how to live life as you age, visit PBS.org. Major funding for Life Part 2 was provided by the Atlantic Philanthropies, supporting older adults in living lives of purpose, and by MetLife Foundation, celebrating the wisdom, talent, and experience of older adults. MetLife Foundation proudly supports Life Part 2.